welcome back to Spectrum TV. It's Karen Tui Boys here, and I am so excited. This is episode 6 on this horrible day here in Wellington. It's blowing and awful and just one of those midwinter days, even though it is spring. And so welcome to Spectrum TV. This is all about being able to refocus on your relationships and your resilience, and for you, for your students, for your own life, for your own children, everybody. And you know, this whole idea of parenting is what we're talking about tonight. And so this parenting road code. So I'd like to welcome Madeline Taylor. So hi, Madeline.
Hello there. Lovely to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here with you this evening.
Oh, I'm so excited about this. And so I found a quote that I really love, and one that we are talking about quite a lot on the parenting summit that we're running. And that is, there's no such thing as a perfect parent, just a real one. And I think that's really important before we get right in and start. It's like no one is telling parents that, you know, you're not doing a good job, but we're real, and we want to be able to give you tips and strategies to be able to make the journey a little easier, because parenting isn't easy. So let me introduce Madeline to you. So she's an author, a parent, educator. She's writes for the Teachers Matter magazine. And again, if you haven't subscribed to this or you haven't been to the Spectrum TV page on the Spectrum Education website, you can get a free copy of this, which includes Madeline's article about, this one is about your brain all over the place and time to refocus. So you can get a free copy of that if you go to the page. And so she specializes in helping people find their way out of trouble. I just love that definition. So welcome, Madeline.
Thank you so much.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and your book coming out.
Sure. So I started off as a social worker working in health and mental health. And one of the things I did was study about conflict, study about how organizations and groups work. And in that work, I came across a woman called Jean Ellerslie Clark. And she taught me this framework for thinking about how to parent, which is the idea of driving on the middle of the road. And so in my work now, I teach, I facilitate, and I coach and support, and I use various models. And I have 3 children who are now in their 20s, and they're doing okay now. It was part of my own parenting journey that helped me to understand how tough parenting is. And especially today, parents are facing things, regardless of COVID, that communities and parents have never had to face before, and it's a tough time. Now, that doesn't mean to say we can get off the hook and we don't have to think about it, but it does mean that we need to have different ways of managing than ever before.
Yes, absolutely. So I know that you're writing this new book about this whole topic that we're talking about today. And for the viewers who know me, you'll know that I am really big on lifelong learning. And so I brought my L plate because we're talking about the road code. And so for me, this is lifelong learning, and L to the power of 3. And so I love that Madeline's going to be talking about this. So what are the 6 building blocks to help parents, please?
So the book is called A Parenting Road Code, and I've always said, you know, wouldn't it be great to have a manual or a road code to help us to think about how to parent? And I was very lucky to have wonderful support community around me with my own extended family, but also the community that I lived in. Anyway, what I've discovered after talking to parents today is that there are some basic things that actually they've forgotten about, or they haven't built into their lives. And so the first building blocks is thinking about, what are my strengths as a parent? Because so much of our marketing today really undermines parents, and we have to claim that back. We have to think about how we can build on the strengths of ourselves as human being in order to do that. The next one is to really be clear about our values, so that we're not actually try to parent in a way that isn't us. And as you say, we can't always be a perfect parent, but we know always that we'll carry our own values with us, and that will be really helpful. We also need to understand about child development a little bit anyway, to know what it is that our children might be doing and how they grow and develop. The next building block is thinking about what is a framework that helps us to think about parenting. And this is where we've come up with Jean's model, which is called the Parenting Developmental Highway. And it talks about us as parents being mainly in the middle of the road. And when things get tricky, we sometimes go off onto the edge, and occasionally we might need a tow truck to help us get back onto the road. And so this is what I'm hoping this small ebook will help us to do. The next one is looking about rules and leadership in the family. And finally, the last building block is looking at how do you actually apply these ideas, and using a tool that comes from this material to help us to use the tow truck idea.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Well, let's dive in and let's talk about remembering our strengths as a parent, because it's so easy to see what we're not doing well as a parent. It's so easy to go, oh, I did that all wrong. So how do we come from our strengths?
So the first thing is to spend some time thinking about those values, as we've talked about, but what do you actually carry within yourself that helps you to make those good decisions? And it might be something about being respectful, which is being able to spend time with your children. That might be one thing. It's also about the behaviors that you might demonstrate. For example, listening. For example, when a child turns to you and they're small, bending down and doing the eye-to-eye contact. It might also be thinking about the structures in our society that help you to be the best parent that you can be. And by that I mean, it might be the laws of our land that help us. And then we can also think about the parents, or the people in our world. And I talk about people, not only real people, but fictitious people, maybe spiritual people, and people who might have already passed, who can be the people in our head that can help us to be the best that we can be. And so as I was parenting, one of the characters that used to help me was Winnie the Pooh. And I used to imagine how Winnie the Pooh might behave in a situation that was a little bit tricky, and I was getting cranky, being a bit sad about being a bit of an Eeyore. So using those ideas to help us to be able to think.
I love that. And so coming from your strength and where you know you're good at are really important. So what about how a parent might go about developing values then? How do we know what our values are and how do we develop those?
So often our values come from our culture, come from the family that we've grown up in. And most of the time we're a little bit unaware of them. And so what we've done is we've actually pulled out 24 values that you can actually have a look at and decide which of these values are most important to you. And sometimes it's really hard to balance, is being kind in public going to balance the rule of the family when you're actually wanting to chastise or to correct your child, not in a nasty way, but for example, if they're about to tear across the road, and yet you've got a rule that says you're not allowed to shout in public, or a value that says you always have to be in decorum. And so we have to be aware of how our values completely can undermine our parenting at times. But if we think about which is most important and then we prioritize those, it can help us to make good decisions. We often know because we have a bit of a compass in our tummy, and we can tell when we're going against our values and we feel uncomfortable. And so it's about paying attention to our internal experience. Thank you.
That's really good. Yeah, that whole feeling in your tummy. One of the things that I know that parents, when I ask them, is how would you like your children to be? What's your wish for your children? The number one word that comes up is I want them to be happy. And And of course, we all want our children to be happy, but nobody is happy all of the time, is one of the things that I often talk about. But also, I often wonder, you talked about, referred about that modeling. What is the parent showing the child? And I wonder, if we want our children to be happy, are we showing happiness? Are we actually showing our children what it looks like to be happy? Or are they looking at us and going, well, if that's what adulthood looks like, I don't think I want that.
The other thing too is the ability to be able to bounce back after something nasty or difficult has occurred, and being able to role model what's occurring internally, so that when we do have something that is sad and upsetting, that our children see us taking steps in order to be able to soothe ourselves and take care of ourselves, and to be able to model that. Absolutely. The other thing too is that if we smooth the way for our children so much as they grow up as children, they won't have any practice in feeling upset or disappointed or distressed in any way. Now, I'm not saying that we go out of our way to create these opportunities, but what I'm saying is that we actually get out of our children's way for them to experience that, and then to help them to think about how they're going to manage. Because just like a toddler, we wouldn't put them into a marathon race for adults. We can't expect our children to learn how to manage life if they don't have any early experiences of crawling, walking, being on rough ground, as you were learning to walk, and then to run, and then to be able to compete. And so we all need the ability to practice and to have time to do that.
And so sometimes as parents, we need to step back out of the way and let the children experience those, for want of a better word, I wouldn't call negative feelings, or those uncomfortable feelings. They're not negative, uncomfortable feelings, and allow them to know that that's part of being human.
Absolutely. And that being anxious can be a helpful sign, because it gets us up in the morning and gets us prepared for something. Recognizing that we're sad enables us to be able to slow down and to think about what we need to be doing. So all our emotions are information that lead us in a direction to be able to help us to problem solve. But one of the issues that families are coping with today is the fact that there's not a lot of practice around delayed gratification and feeling uncomfortable. If you think about nappies, children don't feel wet anymore, so they don't get that biofeedback about needing to be able to nappy train themselves or toilet train themselves. And if we want something very frequently today, we don't have to wait to go to the library. We can just get our phone out and Google. And so there's a lot less opportunity to teach our children in the normal way that we would grow up, that allows them to learn the ordinary life lessons. And that makes it really tough on parents.
Absolutely. And even when they go to a birthday party, now when you play Pass the Parcel, everybody gets a toy. And so it's not like the winner, like perhaps when you and I were children, but it's like everybody, so they don't even experience disappointment. Everybody gets the same toy, so therefore there's no arguments around. We've bubble wrapped so much of this and softened it for them so they don't have to feel uncomfortable, but how important that is. Madeline, as we think about the parenting, one of the things I know as a parent is that you just get into a groove. You just work out what's going on with the kids, and then all of a sudden it just changes, like sometimes overnight. What are some of those key developmental stages and ages and stages that parents should be aware of?
So we're thinking about one of the first ones is actually before the baby's born. And often we don't think that we're parenting at that time, but actually we are. We're preparing, and those of us who've been pregnant will absolutely know that it's the time for preparation and actually taking the time to rest and take care of yourself as a parent before the baby arrives. And so that's the prenatal stage. And then we have a stage where the young baby is, I'm just going to make sure I've got my notes right, from prenatal to being a human. So that's the idea of becoming. And then we have the birth till about 3 months, which is the stage of being. From about 6 months to 18 months, we're looking at the idea of doing, because of course children at that stage, they're busy and their role in life is to get out there and see what the world can do for them and what they can do for the world. The next stage from 18 months to about 3 years, this is based on Erickson's work, is looking at the concept of thinking. So helping children to be able to realize that they have a brain and that they can think and understand a little bit about how the world works. And you'll know that children are always asking why and why and why, and they're really curious and they're little scientists, and our job is to really feed their thinking and to help their curiosity. From about 3 to 6, then they're looking at identity and power. And we also know how that works, isn't it? Because they're wanting to control the family. They're wanting to be the boss. They're wanting to be the boss of themselves, about their dressing, about where they go to, all sorts of things that they want to be the boss of. And it's our job as leaders in the family to help them to realize what they can be the boss of and what they can't be the boss of. And to again experience that limit setting, because boundaries and limits create safety. And one of the things that the highway does is it helps to look at the balance between nurture and structure. Anyway, going back to the developmental stages, then we go from 6 to 12 years where children are learning about structure. After that, we're moving into identity and sexuality, those kinds of things. And interestingly, many of our children are now not really reaching adulthood until their 30s. And so what's happening is that some parents are now having children when actually they're still not developmentally fully adult in their own right. And so that's also creates a dilemma, because many young people don't really want to be an adult in this world. Actually, sometimes we all don't want to be an adult in this world.
That's right. Yes.
And just like you say, we're always keeping on that. We've always got that L plate on because we're always learning.
Yes. Absolutely. And I think that's one of the biggest things as a parent, isn't it? That it's continually changing, and the landscape, the roadway, the pathway is continually changing, and you're having to go, where are we heading now? What's the destination now? If there's a thick forest coming and you can see it coming, and sometimes you don't know when you're going to get out of it, bumpy ground and all that sort of thing. So
yeah.
So you mentioned those rules and boundaries. So in what ways might parents set those for their family?
So again, it goes back to our values and the goals that you set for yourself as a family, because when we start to understand how our children grow and develop, we can think about what are the rules that we want to have that show the values of our family. So for example, it might be eating together. It might be having time to have physical exercise. It might be about making sure we have good sleep. It might be that we have rules about the way that we connect with our families. It might be the way that we use our time after our work and our school or our playtime. So there are many, many different things and the different ways that our families operate. But we need to be able to, as you say, continually update what those rules and agreements are so that we can help our children to learn and to grow. So take, for example, cleaning the toilet. When you think about all the things, I know, it's one of those things that none of us like to do, but, we do it. You think about all the things that a child learns when they learn to clean a toilet. They learn about measurement. They learn about doing a good enough job. They learn about cleanliness and bugs. They learn about service to the family. They also learn about safety and hygiene. So there's so many things that children learn in every little job that we do in the family. Measurement, chemicals, interaction. You can take it in so many different ways. And when our children don't have a role to do in the house or in our families, then we deprive them of so many learning opportunities. And sadly, I know from conversations that I've had with early childhood teachers and university lecturers that our children are losing the ability to communicate, because most of the time they're just looking at a screen and they're not seeing the facial expressions. They don't know what those facial expressions mean. So I've kind of gone off on a little tangent there.
It's good. I was smiling because I remember my son at 15, my children wouldn't clean the toilet. And anyway, he's trained to be a lifeguard and at a swimming pool. And I said, that's fine, off you go. And he got a job and he was all excited. And I said, they'll teach you to clean the toilets. And he goes, no, I'm a lifeguard. I get to stand and watch the swimming pool. And sure enough, he came home the week I had to clean toilets, and I'm like, yay! Now, so I actually liked that because someone else taught him how. So now he has a spotless bathroom, which is great because someone else taught him.
Yeah.
Carry on.
So I'm saying that in the everyday things that we teach our children about being a member of the family, about looking after and taking care of our houses, our clothing, doing the laundry, all of those kinds of things, our children learn so much about themselves, about how they contribute to the family, and about the values of the family. And it's a great opportunity for parents.
Yeah, I absolutely love when I hear my kids, they've done the vacuuming and then someone drops something on the floor and they're like, I've just vacuumed that. I'm like, that's why you want them to do the jobs, right? It's like, I just cleaned the bench and you've left something on it. In fact, I said to my 18-year-old the other day, you need to go flatting. And she looked at me and went, why? And I said, because then you'll be annoyed that someone eats your food out of the fridge, and then you'll be annoyed that people leave their things around and the bathroom won't be clean and someone's shifted something or used something. And I said, that's why you need to go flatting. Madeline, as we begin to finish up, there's the framework based around this Roadcode highway. How do parents actually use it?
So there, as I said before, there's at one end there's nurture, at the other end there's structure, and then there's a continuum, which I won't go into, it's a bit detailed, at each end. And we're wanting to be able to stay on the highway. And so there are 4 questions that help us to know whether or not we're on or off the highway. And the first question is, does this, whatever the child is doing, help them to learn their developmental task? So if a child's having a tantrum at the supermarket, does me giving in to them help them learn their developmental task? Probably not. So therefore, if we give in, we're off the highway. So the first one is needs. Second one is family resources. Are we using too much of family resources? And we're not just talking about money here. We're also talking about energy. We're talking about time. We're talking about distress and upset. So is one child in the family actually taking too much of that space, and other people in the family are missing out? The third one is whose needs are actually being met in this situation. So if I'm so embarrassed that I give in to my child, whose need is actually being met in that moment? Yeah, and that's not good for the child. And the last one is thinking about what's the impact on the community or the greater society. So if I buy that additional plastic toy, where is it going to end up? How quickly is it going to end up in the dump? And so helping us as parents to be able to make those decisions, thinking about those 4 questions.
They are great questions. Thank you. I love that. I remember my son dropping in the middle of a fancy hotel foyer and having a tantrum, but I understood those developmental stages, and I remember standing back and we just coached him. Come on, scream louder, come on. And we just allowed him to feel the feelings. And so we went through it a lot faster than us just, we were embarrassed, but we knew the developmental stage was an important stage. So what about, as we do finish up, some implementation tips? What might be something that a parent can take and do straight away?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is to take one step at a time. So if you're thinking about, anything that you have become more aware about this. Don't try to do too much. Just choose one thing. Remember that all of our parenting comes from a good heart. None of us are trying to do anything that will hurt our children. And so we have to keep that going. Get the support that you need that will help you to be able to stay on the parenting highway most of the time. And if you feel that you are coming off the road, absolutely ask for help. Ask for the help that you need, and you will have people within your community through Spectrum Education, lots of resources, and you'll be able to find a solution that works for you and for your family. So that would be my best advice.
Yeah, that's beautiful, because, and I loved your analogy before, sometimes you just need the tow truck. And I know that I have a lot of different tow trucks that I can call when I'm feeling a bit wobbly and going over those rumble strips and feeling like I'm not quite where I need to be. And so lots of people who support me, and as parents, if it's another parent, or it's a friend, or it's a professional, get that support if you need it. So Madeline, thank you so much for your wisdom and your sharing tonight. And for the viewers, if you're on the replay, or if you're watching this live, just let us know you're here. And if you've got any comments, put them down in the comments so that Madeline and I can respond to those. Otherwise, please remember that in 2 weeks' time, just over 2 weeks' time, we have our Spectrum Parent Summit, and I'll just put the link at the bottom here. So SpectrumEducation.com parenting/summit. We have 21, actually I've added a couple more, 23 or 24 speakers who are just sensational with wonderful information, just like Madeline has shared tonight. And they're going to be sharing, they've got resources that they're going to be sharing, and it'd be great to have you there. So again, thank you, Madeline. And again, to the viewers, if you haven't signed up for the Spectrum TV, if you do, you will get a free copy of the Teachers Matter magazine. And again, you can find that at SpectrumEducation.com, and you can download that and see Madeline's articles there as well. So please, next week, I need to tell you about next week. Next week we have Therese Hoyle. She used to be based here in New Zealand, but now she's back in the UK. She's going to be talking about playgrounds, parenting, schools. She's going to be talking about playtime and the importance of how play is important for our children in all aspects, which will absolutely be fabulous. So I hope to see you there. So until then, be safe and keep learning.